There's so much that often goes left unsaid in a relationship. Things get pushed down until one day we just can't take it anymore. Other times, it's just your monster-in-law making your life a living hell. Today on rLounge, we need a safe space where we can tell those monsters where to go and how to get there. The long-winded saga of my mother-in-law and my doomed-from-the-start marriage. I, female 36, have been married to my husband, C, male 38, for 10 years. We have a 9-year-old son, X. I met C in my first semester of college when I was 17 and he was 19. When we started dating, I could tell right off the bat that he was close to his mom, V. Very, very close. At the time, he lived with her and they talked constantly on the phone. At least 10 or more times a day, throughout the day. This was shortly before texting became common. Often her calls would interrupt our conversations, even dates, or he would call her asking if she reached a destination safely. Before I dive in, a little background first. When C was 14, his mom, V, had a heart attack in front of him and died. He called 911, and when the paramedics arrived, they revived her. She was in a coma for a week, and took a year to recover to where she could return to work and normal life. C suffered from PTSD from this event and would call his mom after every class from his high school office to check in on her to see if she was okay, to the point where the school admin visibly became impatient with his behavior. C received counseling after V recovered for 5 years, up until when I met him, which he told me helped greatly and changed his life. At this point, I completely understood why C and V had such a close relationship. Of course, it made sense to me that given all that happened. Also, I will say when I first met V, she was friendly and accommodating, if not sometimes inappropriate and not safe for work with her comments in my opinion. A quirky, self-described hippie, and obviously very loving towards C and his adopted younger brother, N. I would say the serious problems involving C and V began in our relationship when we moved in together after a few years of dating. I would be lying if I said that before we moved in, the constant checking in on his mom didn't bother me, but to bring it up seemed to be off limits given the circumstances surrounding their relationship. Please know, I know now it was wrong to assume or hope that one day they would naturally wean themselves from their communication habits. I was young and naive back then, and very much in love with C, and I did my best to accept this habit they shared. When C and I moved in together, the constant checking in did not stop. It was the same. Now that C was no longer living with V, she now pressed him more for detailed information about her every day. V would ask him about exactly what we were doing that day, what we were cooking for dinner, etc., and C would happily indulge her. On the occasions when we fought, at this point because I was beginning to become frustrated with the phone calls, many times it was about V. V would ask him what was wrong, and C would say nothing, at least when he was in front of me. So she obviously knew we were having problems. C and I talked about the constant calls, but he would always defend himself and V, again, given the fact that they were so close because of what happened to her. I am the first to admit I'm an idiot for thinking things would improve once we were married. Despite his mother's constant presence in our lives, I still loved C and wanted to have a life with him. I thought perhaps when we married, they would both eventually understand that he now had a wife, and we had an established life together that didn't necessarily involve his or her incessant monitoring. Of course, after we were married, it didn't stop. When we bought our first house and I was pregnant with our son, I finally had a talk with them together in person to bring up my frustrations at their communication. By the way, C was unemployed with 0 credit at this point in our marriage, and I had a career of 4 years, and with my excellent credit was the reason I qualified for the mortgage. Of course, the meeting went as expected, and they both defended themselves and told me I didn't understand their closeness because I was never close to my own mother, nor did I understand what they went through together. The conversation didn't go well, to say the least. Still, I soldiered on, nothing changed, and my resentment towards V and C only grew. After we had our son and he grew older, I went to school online and earned my MA, while still working in my full-time career, and C in his mid-30s finally landed a full-time job. Both V and C knew I was annoyed by their phone calls, so he would call her on the way home from work and at night in the garage, and they would also text together constantly. V would also pop over to our home at random times with only a few moments' notice to drop off things, like expired food she didn't want, etc. At this point, I was so done with her involvement in our life that I couldn't stand being around her. Her being present began to make my skin crawl. Also, I should mention something about V that really put me over the edge with her around this time. She is very obsessed with body image. It's safe to say she is vain and cares greatly about looks to the point where she comments on other people's weight and looks, including my own. At one point, after having our son, I was the heaviest I'd ever been, I would catch V looking me up and down at get-togethers, and I always felt uncomfortable around her. When I finally dropped about 60 pounds, she told me that she was happy for me, and that I looked so unhappy when I was heavier. By the way, she also had a very bad habit of being overly honest with people, to the point where it hurt feelings. I know it hurts others' feelings, though they would never tell her. I have too many examples of this to list, but just to name one, she once told C's aunt that she looked like she had a disease on her face when she had a skin rash. Stuff like that. Kind of not cool, right? Fast forward to 2020. When COVID hit, I had no choice but to leave my career of 8 years to homeschool our son, while my husband stayed at his job because he could work remotely and was also in school, which his work was paying for. The next 2 years that followed were some of the hardest I have personally ever gone through. I had 2 serious mental health crises in which the police were involved to perform a wellness check on me. They both stemmed and escalated from fights about V and C's relationship. I have not been able to receive mental health care like therapy because of insurance issues, though I am certain I have depression and anxiety. In 2022, because our house's value was very high and we had tons of equity, my husband pushed to sell our home and move in with, you guessed it, V, while we searched for another home to buy. I instantly rejected the idea, telling C it would never ever work, that I would hate every moment of it, and that V and I would not get along. Despite my misgivings, of course, I finally relented, like a dummy, and we sold our home and moved in with good old V. For the first week or so, things were okay. She rents a 3-bedroom home and has 2 spare rooms for us, and has a boyfriend, so sometimes she spends the night at his house. However, shortly after the honeymoon period of us living with her, her true nature came out to rear its ugly head. Our son has special needs, and she cannot help but make judgmental comments about him, saying things like he has no manners, and also once made a comment about wanting to strangle him. She said she was joking, but dang, what a crappy joke, right? I haven't mentioned this yet, but she is also racist and makes really messed up comments about black people being ghetto, and she refuses to acknowledge that systemic racism is a problem in the US, and says that black people need to get over the past. Yeah, she's a real gem, that one. C is also half black, mind you. Good luck wrapping your head around that. I grew upset at this particular comment and told her I needed to end the conversation and go to another room, to which she followed me and continued her messed up rant, adding that she thinks the only way to solve the poverty and drug crisis with ghetto people is to take their children away from them. What the F? I also caught her in a lie, which has led to my resentment towards her. C had an ex-girlfriend, K, that he dated throughout high school. They broke up right after high school because K cheated on him with his friend. V and K got along well though, and without my knowledge, V kept in contact with K all these years. Last year, V had to sell her mother's duplexes because she passed away, and told us that she had a potential buyer whom she knew, but she wouldn't tell me who. When the sale was close enough to going through, C told me who the buyer was. It turns out it was K, and that V purposely did not tell me because she didn't want to make me angry. Yes, C knew and didn't tell me either. When I confronted V about it, she told me she didn't want to tell me because I have an attitude about everything. K was also invited to C's grandma's funeral, and so I had to watch K and V interacting together like longtime friends they've been, that I didn't know about. V also specifically gave K tasks to help with at the funeral reception, but not me, though I did end up helping a ton anyways because I was not about to stoop to V's level of pettiness at the time. Anyways, C and I found a home in the mountains about an hour away that we ended up purchasing soon after we moved into V's. It may have been my idea to move an hour away from V, to hopefully put some distance between us and V. This is when things turned very, very sour between us. When we told her the good news about our purchase, she told us, "Are you sure you want to live that far away?" And "I'll pray for you." Not, "Congratulations," or "I'm happy for you." She was obviously disappointed about our decision. The house we bought outright, and we thought with some cleaning up, because it was a fixer, we would be able to move into it soon. But that turned out not to be the case, and the house needs a whole new roof because of its leaking. It is also in a rural area, and difficult to get to when it snows, with the steepness of the driveway and black ice. So we'll have to adjust to living there, meaning we have to live with V for a longer amount of time, many months more, until we figure all of this out. One day on our drive up to the house, C mentioned that we should consider selling the house, to which I responded, "Oh, did V suggest that?" And he said yes, that she told him it was too far from his job and wasn't what he wanted because she knew him. I was livid at this, and thus began what I consider to be the ultimate last straw in our marriage. Even after everything, I know. Another day, when she was on the phone with him, I overheard her tell him, "I would shoot myself if I had to drive there every day." I later texted her that day, "Hey, by the way, telling someone you would shoot yourself if you had to drive the distance they had to drive is not very nice. It's actually very rude. I've made it a goal of mine to call you on things you say that are hurtful to me." To which she responded, "Point taken." Not, "Sorry." She never apologizes. I feel as if she has been very selfish in sabotaging our relationship from the very beginning. C and V seem to put their own needs and relationship before mine. Her health has always been a concern for C, and whenever she tells him about a particular ailment she has, it seems to heighten his anxiety surrounding her, and he checks on her more. Yet whenever I am sick, he minimizes it and says things like, "You're feeling better now, right?" Or, "It doesn't seem that bad." At this point in my life and our marriage, I am mentally done. I have to be honest and say I have no love left for C. It's been chiseled away all these years. I feel worn down, running on autopilot for the sake of our son. I have also suffered from another very bad mental health crisis while living with V. Thankfully, she wasn't around to see it happen. I have expressed to C many times this past year that I am strongly considering divorce at this point, and after me saying it many times, he has told me that I should consider therapy first and he'll pay for it. But if that's what I ultimately want, he has no choice but to accept it. I want to be free. I want to sell our home, take the money, and leave. Yet C has threatened me, telling me he'll take full custody of our son if I leave because of my mental health situation. And because he was the one to call for the wellness check on me, he has documented evidence against me, and I'll most likely lose that fight. At this point, I would let him take full custody. I want to take my money and leave the country and never look back. I guess that's the end of my rant. Maybe I'll have a better update later, but I'm not sure. I just want to be free of this. It feels like prison and oppression, and I'm at the lowest point in my life. Not yet rock bottom, but definitely in a pit and sinking deeper. I know it's my fault for letting this happen to me, for not holding C and V accountable, but honestly, I'm not as strong as I thought I was. I wanted the security of having a partner in this life, but it came at the cost of losing my sense of worth and my happiness. Anyways, thanks for reading. Let's see how the community thinks. A. Rose says, "Speak to a lawyer ASAP. Don't let him know what you're doing. Collect and safely store your important documents where he nor his mother can access them, and lock your credit so they can't sabotage you. Speak to your doctor or online therapist. Again, don't let him know. For your own mental health. Wishing you all the best, X." Creme de Maron says, "Document everything. Secretly seek for a lawyer. Keep your important papers in a safe place. Add passwords to anything. Personal bank account, medical stuff, etc. And make an exit plan. This is not a life but hell. You deserve so much better." One more thought from Ethical Nihilist. "If you're being treated for depression, then they can't use it against you. Take him up on the therapy offer and go all in. Then decide what you want. If they try to use your treated mental health against you, they'll look like fools. Take your time and get your ducks in a row. You are strong and capable and wonderful. You'll come out on the other side even better." Honestly, I would try therapy first before anything else, and I would strongly consider couples therapy. I think if he's up to it, it might be worth just hashing it out in a safe environment with someone who doesn't have any preconceived notion about the two of you and your mother-in-law. What might even work is having a therapy session with your mother-in-law. Not ideal being in the same room as her given her history, but at least she'll know where you're coming from. And you tried. It sounds like your husband is still hung up on what happened years ago and might still be suffering from PTSD. I think there's a lot of things that are going unhealed and swept under the rug in your relationship, thus breaking it down. You need a space to be totally vulnerable with each other. And a lot has happened while you've been together. Processing all of that, especially a pandemic, isn't easy. What would you do? Thank you for joining us today on rLounge. Before you go, be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you have something you want to say regarding today's content, share that with us in the comments below.